All right, we'll start the meeting here, March 21st, 6 p.m. Roll call, please. Got that right, AJ?
Yep, and I just asked that everyone bears with me as I fill in for the very organized Mr. Jewett.
Make sure your mics are on, please. And
How the outfit doesn't quite match.
I will try as close as I could get.
Now you know how I feel.
Councilman Scott,
Here.
Councilmember Sullivan,
Present.
Councilmember Pinello,
Here.
Councilmember Lane,
Here.
Councilmember Thompson,
Here.
Councilmember Carpenter,
Here.
Councilmember Beckwith,
Present.
Councilmember Michaels.
Here.
we'll get on the rise for the school. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. To have a moment of silence if we could, in hopes that two powerful leaders that are meeting this week can get together and just have some common sense and work together. We can get everything worked out. Thank you. I'm going to skip down to proclamations due to time. I know some of our honored guests have other practices because they're moved out from basketball now. So first, I would like to recognize, I'm going to go up to the podium here for this. We have a outstanding basketball team. They did a great job this year. I know that the media was against your girls for a while on some of their issues, not our media locally, but outside media. I know you took homage to that, so that was shared with me, so I appreciate that. We won't do that today, but thank you for that. But Ms. Myers has a little following. She's the head coach and she's assisted by Rob Rivers, but he's here too. And they do a tremendous job with these young ladies, and their team is very successful and very excited for them. One of the cool stories, I was up at OCC watching the game, and one of our police officers was there off duty on porch, and she was there with her daughter, and it was her birthday, and she had 8 of her friends there. So she couldn't do any more fun than be with her family and watch Coach Myers. Very excited for her. So that's kind of neat how that works. So I don't know, 11-year-old girls and 8 of them there. That's a great birthday party. They're gonna go watch. That was a great game, by the way. And the family that was there, the parents that are all part here that are support their daughters in the effort. The other team had a larger student section than we did. Our parents took over and did a much better job. So some of them were pretty intense. Some fathers we have conversations with. It was awesome to see even some, come right off the bench, right hot, shoot that 3-point right off the bat. It was awesome. It was great stuff. So, but it truly took a team, and we're thank our police department, fire department for your efforts, and that was great. To be able to have honor that, and we emptied all the bars out for you to wave it down the street. We tried to set all that up for you. So I'd like to call up Ms. Myers and Mr. Rivers if he's here, and maybe we could say something about each one and call each player out. Right. Now you go hard.
Yeah. Great. Thank you so much. Hey, I'm Janice Meyer, the basketball coach. Yeah, we had a tremendous community support. It was really great just to be a part of it. These girls give their heart and soul. A lot of expectation, a lot of demand, a lot of everything for years to come now. So they deserve every second of it, and we're honored to be here. So thank you. Yeah, I'll call them up one at a time so you guys can kind of put a name to a face. And girls, they gave us a key to the city. Which is cool because the section 3 actually didn't give it. It's really nice, so, cool. All right, we'll start with Aubrey Larkin. Top one. Mallory Turner. Lily Yang. Carter Hubbard. Kendall Mack. Katie Harris. Melrosa Gambetta. Brandy Larkin. Claire Turner. And Gabby Brown.
Yeah.
And everybody did.
Yeah, but they.
Yeah. That's fine. All right, I'm gonna just do the second proclamation and then we'll go to the privilege of the floor. Second proclamation. You want to read on that one? Sure. Then we'll do the other.
Resolved that the city of Portland Mayor Steve and the common council hereby declare and proclaim April as Fair Housing Month in the city of Portland, New York.
All right, so, we need to keep fair housing in our mind and keep trying to do everything we can to improve our housing stock, so this is a recognition of that. Yeah. All right, so I'll jump back to privilege of the floor. Mr. Tom Larson.
Hello. My name is Tom Larson. I was vice chair now with the zoning hearing board of the city of Portland. You may remember I was here February. Wanted to make clear to myself and some of the proposed language in the rural repurposing property is going to still include an oversight role in terms of projects, initial oversight for the zoning hearing board, just as it is for any other non-conforming or various requests or anything similar to. And I was assured at that meeting that that was going to be the case. Very short presentation. However, when I looked at some of the language, I don't see the zoning hearing board mentioned anywhere. You see planning commission, its advisory role. I don't see that anywhere where a zoning hearing board is included in any of the revised language for you.
Yeah, I can speak to this a little bit. Ultimately, when we were fleshing this out, which was a great suggestion, I think you weren't alone in that. It was contemplated that this should be a special use permit, which is something that falls under the purview of the planning commission, not the zoning, right? Area variances. And that way, these types of things, if they come about, wouldn't run with the parcel that's seeking this, so it would be limited to that individual project, special use permit, which is something that state regulations, state law, I'd say has to go to planning, sometimes triggered county planning oversight as well. But the zoning board contemplates, as you well know, variances. Right, and those are permanent decisions relative to particular parcel of the city. So I think that that was the goal here, that on a case by case basis, can this thing serve this greater public benefit? And make sure that it's limited to that project that's being presented to the council, the planning. It doesn't open the doors to rezone or spot zone that particular parcel moving forward. And we're not rezoning that, this would be a use permit. Does that make sense?
It does. I would think that a good way to bridge the difference there might be to allow for, in your language, the planning commission to refer projects to the zoning hearing board. There are many things that we catch. Most recently was the project report that was, we were able to see with a little more time on our hands and a little time to evaluate certain requests that are made. I just think that that term, substantial public benefit, means many different things, to many different people. Having another board, concerned citizens, is a good track record of evaluating objectively each project before it would be a good step in the right direction towards moving anything further along the lines of this revised rule.
Right, thank you. Very good. I just want to remind everybody that it's, that section of the code, that was supporting document only, because we're not voting on it. We'll have another public hearing at the next meeting. But the adjustments were made as we discussed last meeting. Do it, we'll have another public hearing. So that is not the same resolution that is going forward today, which I will probably table again, because there was enough changes made from the last public hearing you guys had to what it is today. We'll have another public hearing on that next, so I want to make sure that's clear on others that want to speak to this as well.
Is there a reason why that can't be added? The zoning,
We can discuss, we'll discuss that and see, but it is a good point. I mean, I think it would be a typical thing that we would do anyways, like we thought it was need for zoning. And I'll give you an example. For example, the 911 center that's on Court Street right now is a perfect example that is outside of the code for what it's used for. And this is exact use of a public purpose that we could use it. So, you know, because it's not zoned for that to be there. So it's currently that project being done. So it'd be a good one to put forth and be able to go through the whole process to do that. That's the intent of it. Not allow that, but does that make sense? What does that do? And then that makes it specific to that use. So if it goes in change hands, because it's been that all that time, it doesn't allow it to continue packages. So hopefully, people that are discussing about it, again, it's the opposite.
but it would make sense to have zoning.
I think there's times that they have to review. Absolutely. That's always the case.
But the planning process might trigger zoning audit.
Right, and then so it goes to planning, and planning will say, hey, I think zoning should be able to look at it, or we might, say, based on what it is, I don't know what it is right now, but like, for example, technically, that is a lot of the point that it isn't for zoning. So they're gonna look at it as a permissible use, because they're a legal entity that is an appellate court for appeals. Is it proper for an appeal court to hear something that, you know, that is not in the code anyway? What are they gonna hear? If I don't saying, so to go back to the argument, so you would say, this is zone R1, we're trying to make it an R4 use, let's say. That was the situation, then is it, what the zoning board is not gonna be able to say that that's not appropriate? We know it's not appropriate, that's the purpose of doing it. So I don't know if it's necessary to have that. There might be cases that I might be able to think of a use, that might be a use to do that, but if you start doing that, then it takes away the appeal process for somebody after, because you're setting precedent using your appellate court to set the precedent. But we will look into that. That's my immediate reaction to that would do that, but there is a case that I would want their opinion, but remember, the planning has given us their opinion as well. That's what they do.
And the first instance, the zoning board would hear something that perhaps the council or planning board denied,
Right.
and they would appeal to that. that make sense?
Yeah, so that if we take away the appeal process, then that would not be the case.
Obviously, we gotta have checks and balances, nothing against the zoning board. Respect everything you do, I was on the planning board for many years. But certain instances don't require zoning, certain don't require planning. A lot of times you get a building permit, boy. You know, it's gotta send it to planning, or it's gotta send it to zoning, it's gotta go to the county. I think we're trying to cover all that, and there's some good points, but I think at some point. There might be some things that you guys might not be aware of, or don't need to be aware. I'm not, don't take that to heart, I'm just saying that. Different departments sometimes, unless you really wanna get involved, we don't know what's going on because. We don't need to know what's going on. If you're asking, you need to know what's going on, then maybe you just need to be, in light of it, or get the emails, so you can show up, but we all know when the meetings are, but sometimes it's something, you might not, get to your department, doesn't need to go in front.
There might be a point where we want to.
Right, so if you're asking, which I have no problem with, and I'm saying, I'm just, this is all just coming out, if you think you need to be notified, then maybe in that new law we're gonna make for these instances, that both parties need to be notified. Whether you have any say in it or not, I have no problem that you guys can be notified. And that's what maybe we need to do.
We'll review that and we'll put it in there.
That's all I'll
We
do.
can maybe put that language in there that gives us the option, because I think that thought needs to be there for the future, that somebody would think to do that.
That's the thing.
That might be a thought to do in
Right.
the future, so we'll discuss that. we'll-
And obviously too, we're not trying to push this through and get this done today or last meeting, and we got stuff to work on. And appreciate your input, and I think we'll get there.
That's what made the changes before, but Mr. Doctor.
Start by saying the only person I've ever called Mr. Decker was my grandfather. Thank you. I'm here for a couple items, mainly to do with the waterworks. I've been a citizen of this community for my whole life. If anybody doesn't know me, my name is Mike Dexter. I've been associated with the water board. I was hired in 1972 to read meters. I retired in 2002. I've been maintained by the city to do a lot of the projects that I did while I was working at the waterworks. So I am also the unofficial historian of the waterworks. My sister did a study back in 1977 and went all the way back to 1884 when the waterworks was called the Cortland Waterworks Company, and it was taken over by the city in 1910. And it became known as the Cortland Water Board for almost 90 years. My two concerns are, one, that you're considering doing walking trails at the rear of the waterworks from the about 100 acres from the front of the waterworks where the deer pen is, and there's about 100 acres that go all the way out to 281, which the city has used over a period of time for cross-country skiing. It's not an objection. I just think that you ought to be really, really careful when you open it up to have people walking out back, because it is a sole source aquifer for the city of Cortland, which entails 20,000 people. If anybody's old enough to remember back in the mid-80s when Smith Corona polluted the water system with what was known as TCE. The water board spent almost $700,000 to put an air stripper in to remediate the problems that were coming down the stream with this TCE. We were told that within a year, the water would be polluted. The air stripper was built, it was reimbursed by going after Smith Corona. Both Cortlandville, the city, and the health department got a share of that money. The air stripper was installed, it's now been moved out back closer to where the chlorine is put in. The good part about the water system in Cortland is the water can make it into the water table very simply, very easily. The shale, the rock, the sand that filters the water all the way down into the aquifer, it's referred to as the Dry Creek, Otter Creek Aquifer. It makes it into the water system very quickly. The bad part about our water system is any pollutants also make it into the water system very quickly. That's why the 281 corridor has always been on the agenda anytime there's anything done out there. One of the items that was brought up is when Walmart built a new store, and I think they were kept from putting in a repair shop out there where Walmart is, just because it sits on top of the aquifer. A couple of the other things that have come up, Gutch's Lumber, Bestway Lumber at one time wanted to put a railroad spur in, just like Gutch's Lumber has one that's not used very much. They wanted to put a railroad spur in to Bestway Lumber so they could better transport their lumber instead of bringing it from the city out there. It was turned down by the health department, Portlandville, and the city of Portland because they did not want diesel engines sitting on top of the aquifer. Bad idea. It kind of went by the wayside. If you also remember, Burn Dairy wanted to put a gas station on Tompkins Street, turned down on the aquifer gas station. Gas stations have been turned down out on 281 many times, and I kind of wonder why the one out by the golf course was able to get in, because that is where the aquifer goes. It extends out as far as the Elm Tree Golf Course. 9/11 came up. People used to walk in the waterworks. What happened was 9/11, the phones all had a message by them. Any kind of threats or anything that came in over a phone number, over the phone, take their name, take their message, whatever you could get, because at that particular time, people were worried about what could happen to the aquifer when you get some crazy people walking out, or anybody go out in the aquifer. There are test wells in the aquifer out back. They were put in when the TCE came down the road. And Nick, I'm sure is very aware of those, the test wells that they put in to monitor the water that's coming down through the aquifer. It comes down Otter Creek, passes by the waterworks, ends up in the Ticonderoga, which ends up in the Susquehanna, which ends up in the Chesapeake Bay. I'm not totally opposed to having people out walking out back. We also have a small deer population out back. In addition to the deer that we have in the front, there are wild deer that live out back. It depends on what kind of winter it was, how many survive, and there's always a presence of deer out back. We get complaints from the neighbors all the time about the deer that are coming from the waterworks. They don't belong to us, but they live on our property out back. Dogs, other animals going out back would not be a good thing for the animals that live out back unless you brought somebody in who would totally eliminate the wild deer that are out back, which is not easy. As far as I know, the creek that runs there runs underneath 281. I don't know whether there's any screens there or not, but the deer can always get on the waterworks property fairly easily. Not to confuse them with the deer that are out front. They are in a contained pen. There's about 15 acres. Those deer are not going out of the deer pen. They do not get out back. So I guess I would just advise you to be extremely careful if you open up the back waterworks to allow people to walk out there. And if you've been reading in the paper about all of the threats about all of our power grids in the country, the threats that people had on the power grids of shutting down our system, not that hard to do. Waterworks is a very, very sensitive area. Like I said, it supplied 20,000 people just in the city of Portland. Portlandville also takes water out of the same aquifer. There's wells that are a little more farther upstream. So please, if you do go that way, be very considerate of what could happen if you allow people to walk out back. 9 out of 10 might be good people. The one person that goes out back does something harmful out back, you will pay the consequences for whatever happens to the water system. My second item is the back 100 acres after the blowdown in 1986 of all the trees. When the wind shear came through and blew down a lot of trees, some in the deer pen, but most of them were out back. It was never completely cleaned up from that blowdown back in 1986. I used to walk out back all the time. There were fire trails that were neat, they were concise, you knew where to go. Since then, a lot of the forest has been cut down, pine trees that have died for diseases, for whatever reason, and it never has been completely managed out back. If anybody goes out there, if you knew what it used to look like, it's kind of a disaster area right now with trees that are still down all the way back to the 86 when the blowdown was. We've never reforested out back. They tried once because when they were going to harvest the trees out back, the pine trees, they were marking them and the DEC got in there and said, what are you doing? Because they should have been included because there was a deal between the DEC and the water board in 1947 that would help you manage the forest. So they decided to cut 50 feet down and leave 100 feet. If you go back out back right now, you'll see the same 50 feet of nothing growing in that 50 feet. They tried planting some red oaks because they said deer wouldn't eat red oaks. Deer that are hungry will eat anything. They'll eat bark, they'll eat stones to fill up their stomach, and they will die of starvation. My suggestion to you is, right now, the county hired a company out of Marathon, I believe. There was an item in the newspaper last Friday. They hired a company. Portland County received a $30,000 grant from the State Department of Environmental Conservation to hire consultants. I have a copy of that study that they came up with. There's gonna be a meeting on March 28th at the Grange Building at 5 o'clock. I would highly recommend that you go to that meeting and maybe get some tips on how to manage a forest. $30,000, it was a grant. I'm sure there's money out there for the city to do the same thing. They came in, they told them what they had to do, trees that should come down, trees that can stay, new trees should be planted. Like I said, there was an article in last Friday night's paper, the 17th, which talked about what the county is trying to do with Linda Jones and her committee for the Friends of Dwyer Memorial Park are trying to do. I would highly recommend that maybe you hire a consultant to go out back and do the work. It's easy to say that the DPW can do it during off times or anybody can do it, but they're busy. You need to hire somebody that knows what they're doing, and this company out of Marathon, it's in the paper. If you go to this meeting, it's going to be at the Grange. The name of the company was, I think it was LBS Ecological of Brooktondale. Project consultant will review the results of the forest inventory and make recommendations for managing the forest. Please take time to go to that meeting. I hope to be there just because I like trees. As many of you know, I'm chairman of the Landscape and Design Commission, which is a tree commission. And a lot of people might wonder why I have a commitment to the water board. There's a plaque on the building over there, which I'm very proud of. It's called the Mike Dexter Building. The other plaque that's at the water board was named after my stepfather, who worked at the water board for 49 years, retired in 1971. I have now been there 50 years, and I guess I'm probably the longest standing employee of the Portland Water Board. And when I retired, I was still working for the water board before the city took it over. So it's something that's very, very dear to my heart. Thank you for listening.
Mr. Dexter, a question. It's my understanding that the X amount of wells that are out there, that in order for a trail to be opened up, there would have to be structures built that would be able to be locked over each of those wells.
I'm sure they are locked. There's 3 wells, there's 3 production wells.
But there would have to be a structure.
There are structures over all 3 of the production wells.
Okay, and
But that's not the problem. The wells just pump the water up out of the ground. The test wells that are out back, like I said, that area is very sensitive.
okay,
For people to come in there and do whatever they wanted to do. The TCE was something that was put in out at Smith Groneman back at one of their plants. Nobody knew about it for years and years and years, 50-gallon drums of TCE into the ground. It got into people's wells. All of a sudden, they started backing up and found out that it came from Paul Trinity at the time was the one doing the well testing. They had their own private wells because Portlandville didn't supply that amount of water to everybody in Portlandville. They backed up and found that it came from Smith Groneman. I'm not so concerned about the wells themselves. The wells are locked up.
but there would have to be, I assume, someone to, say if they went dawn to dusk, there would have to be someone that would open up some form of gate.
That's
And
what I'm asking you to do to
And
make
then
sure the
closing,
rubber
you would have to, someone would have to go through and check to make sure everybody was out.
cross-country skiing, they do that. They had people sign up when they were building the new well out back. They haven't cross-country skied for 3 years before COVID because they were building a new building out back. Yes, they were monitored in and out, but that doesn't keep people from, somebody says, I'm going cross-country skiing today. And like I said, the power plant grid right now, if you've been reading the paper like I have, the power grid system is very, very, if somebody wanted to do something to our system in this country, it wouldn't be very hard to shut down the power system. National Grid is owned by a company in Great Britain. The gas company is owned by a company in Spain. The water department is owned locally. We're fortunate that is the case.
Yeah, I mean, I'll get to it in my mayor's report. I'll do a touch base on where we are on this project and what's going on and how everything that is discussed is being taken care of and being worked on. So we'll talk about that more in depth as when we get appropriate protocol through the meeting, okay? I will address that in my mayor's report. Have more people to talk, and that's Brendan McGovern.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, for City Council. Yeah, again, my name is Brendan McGovern. I'm an educator at Department of Geography at Binghamton University. I'm a member of the Portland City Planning Commission. I'm not here to talk about the 100 at this, I haven't had a chance to review all these. I look forward to seeing them and talking about them it's going to come up against, it's a planning.
Yes,
next
it's
week, correct?
on the agenda, yes.
Thanks, appreciate that. But I am here again to register my strong opposition to proposed law number 12, 2023, to amend chapter 300 to allow for building or property repurposed that serves as a substantial public interest. Benefit. I've spoken with my colleagues at Binghamton University who also teach planning. They unanimously agree that it's very unusual for a legislative body, any municipality, to grant itself this power. This proposed law does not provide an extra provision of due diligence or safety by giving the council final say in any matter it deems a substantial public benefit. A term that's defined by this very board on a case-by-case basis. Instead, it will create uncertainty for both developers and residents as issues are decided on a case-by-case basis with no defined set codified criteria, at least as far as I see it at this point. It's the council controls development by establishing laws and entrusting their execution to the non-political planning boards and zoning boards. Right? Change the laws, change the codes, right? To make it easier, if the issue is vacant properties, change these laws and codes to make it easier to approve special use permits for vacant or unoccupied buildings. And then planning and zoning will follow those laws. Using, not on a case-by-case basis, but by applying the same standards to all, with all of the training and all of the experience that we bring to these procedures. I really appreciated Tom Larson's remarks, and we were discussing for a moment here, my colleague Tom's remarks, that never have we seen a vacant, dilapidated property that there was interest in, that some issue could not be resolved to move forward. What we have seen is when there is a vacant property that may be extraordinarily useful for, or of value to a particular interest, then if it's rezoned or if there's a change, we've seen issues that arise from those kind of situations. So putting this final say on the council to prove, or having the final say in reducing zoning and planning to recommending bodies, maybe not this council, but future councils, it leaves the definition of what is a substantial public benefit to a political entity. So that's kind of worrisome to me. Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'm Diane Chu, and I'd also like to speak to the local law 12 and echo Mr. McGovern's sentiments. I'd like to recommend to you that a substantial public use for instance, Parker School, a non-used building, would be childcare, as I mentioned previously. I worry that the wording of this law is overly vague, and I don't know what metrics the council might use to determine what is a substantial public benefit. Student housing could be a substantial public benefit. Heck, the parlor might be a substantial benefit. It's business. Who knows what it is? It's overly vague, and I would hope you would think about real needs like childcare. We know is a huge need in the community. So I give that as a recommendation for potential use to a building that's no longer being used. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, due to the way the agenda worked out, the mayor has reported. Yes. But I just want to take a minute to address a couple of comments that were made in that, just to clarify a couple things. First, we'll start with Mr. Decker and the waterworks property. So, I too agree that the back, recalling your words like that you said, the back area is a disaster, maybe I'll paraphrase that. I would agree with that 110%, and we have not been good stewards of that property. And that's been an issue. I think that, and that was the impetus of trying to get attention to that area. Some of the reasons the trees aren't growing is because of the deer population underneath, and that's defined by experts. So we've already had experts on the property to look at the trees, to evaluate and assess the situation. We've talked to the college and they're putting together what uses they could utilize for science and for other exploration to make us better stewards of the fish, the duck, deer, the trees, and all the other items that are on that beautiful forest that we have in the middle of our city. And by hopefully engaging some good stewards that could utilize those trails, would draw the attention and the finances needed to pay attention to what has to do with that beautiful resource we have. The deer that are in the back are killing the undergrowth, and it's my belief, I have a little bit of experience in the sawmill industry, that those trees will all be down, will there be no reforestation happening because of deer eating them. So and that's what the experts said too. So right now it is back to our environmental committee. They're having this on their agenda item to discuss. Welcome to go to that. That's a public meeting and that's on their agenda item to discuss the pros and cons, if you will, and concerns. Come up with a list of concerns, whether it's security to make sure the gates are closed, you know, how that would all work out to try to make it the best use and better yet, be better stewards. I mean, the surrounding property owners have to deal with issues. We've had everything from beaver problems to other issues in that wildlife problems that I don't think we're necessarily being good stewards for. So that is, we're in the planning process of that. Certainly, there's a lot of work that has to be done. It's now the experts have gone through, looked at the trees and tried to do that. They're continuing on to make their assessment, going to the environmental committee to see what the impact is. We respect their input back to have that. So we're far from where we want to be, far from even putting the first stone down to say that the trails would be an exact thing. So that would be continued. I would employ you to go to those if you can.
I just asked the question of who your experts were and all that.
Soil and water was involved, and the barber and help me out, Nick,
DC.
and DEC. So the tree forestation for DEC.
That's fine. These people do this for a living.
Understood. So we'll continue down the path. That's exactly the path that they took the park and truck. So it's we're not doing anything different. They did the same path we did. We did the exploratory first, and then I don't think it's beneficial to write an RFP when we don't know all the uses. We don't know that we have all the uses for that property. We don't have all that we want to do with that property and all the pros and cons from our locals to get their input. That's why they're there. That's why we put those committees there. So once we do that, then that's certainly a probability. When we put it out RFP, just as the county did, however, it's the best one that is experienced in that will get us that recommendation. But those local resources, the soil, water, is very educated, very educated in that. And they volunteered their time so far. So we'll continue that. Make sure it'll be all perfectly, everybody has a chance to discuss it, give their input and help on great, to make it a better process. As far as the other items that we're discussing here, none of these items are up for vote today, but other items, there was some amendments made to that one that Mr. McGovern, Ms. Chu was talking about. And I recognize that, you know, other municipalities have done it. It is rare that some don't, but I do challenge back to no doubt that we do need daycare. I don't know if Ms. Chu's still here. Yeah, so, but no doubt we do daycare, but technically, we can't put daycare in Parker School. We can't put a school back in Parker School, the way our zoning and our codes are written now. If we write our codes so loose that we can do that, then we've created numerous other situations in the city and other areas that could continue to be a problem. So that's what we're trying to caution against. So we're having some kind of control. Having a political body that is elected by the people of the city that represent all the people in the city as a whole. And whether whatever word would be, I think that's an appropriate body to review this and make the best use of what that would be. But going back to Parker School, that the only thing that we can do with Parker School without this law is tear it down. But Roy, help me out, R2, what is that? R2, we can only make it an R2 district, that's it. So that means the building, we could put 2 families in it. And that's, we can make the building either that, or we force to tear it down and try to start over. This is to avoid that process, and avoid going through that, there would be multiple public hearings, so it would be a public hearing for us to hear it, to entertain it. Then there'd be a public hearing in planning, possibly ZBA if necessary. Back to this meeting again to make that final determination. If you can't rile up people that would be against it, or some use that would be possible for us. In the past, we've done it and just arbitrarily just chose to do it. We completely chose to do it. To purchase property, AKA Parker School, that was supposed to go to planning first. Planning's supposed to determine if that's a beneficial use for the city to purchase. Did you know that? That was supposed to happen. That did not happen. Now here we are, we have Parker School. Now we have to figure out what we can do with it. It's been a year, it's been lapsed, it can't be a school. So now we have to have some kind of system in place to be able to make things happen or make something happen. Same thing with the, up on the hill for the 911 center. That was the one that impetus first. So without disclosing and saying that, that's not zoned for what they wanted, the county wants to put in there. We certainly don't want to impede that process. They've gone through all this process, they've gone through all the grants and got all this money to be able to do that. But there's no avenue for us to make that change. And if we make the law ambiguous enough and specific enough, if we make it too specific and not ambiguous enough, then it becomes a problem for that reason. So that is the intent of this, and it's, you know, that's why we're taking our time, rewriting it based on what has been inputted back. And I like Mr. Larson's input, I think that's a great input to do it. We'll look at that the repercussion there, but we gotta be careful tying when we tie our courts, our own appellate court system into it. That part is a little outside, so we'll have to get support on that. But without that, I think, you know, we cover the bases that Mr. Thompson brought up in the past about, you know, check at the front door and the back door, I think was the statement. I think we have that. I think we have that, and I'm certainly entertaining any other suggestions, but I also want to have the avenue to be able to make that a daycare, make that anything else, put any other item in there, whatever that might be. We have no ability to do that. So as of now.
Mayor, I don't mean to add to the general frustration around this, but I don't understand why we can't handle the 911 center with the special permit process that we currently have.
It's not zoned for that to use that. No, it's
So they
a
can-
special, and Roy can speak to it if you need more specifics, but a special use is not, that special use is not allowed. Like, it's not a use.
It's not like
We can't just create special uses. It's not, you know what I mean? Like, yeah,
Special uses are, even to like. Seek a special use permit has to be designated within our code. If it doesn't say that you can even attempt to get a special use permit for that. Project. It's prohibited.
couldn't we change that in the code and still have planning?
sure.
That you could get a special use permit for any.
Decide.
The danger of that is exactly that special use permit, and just as concerned as, you know, it was mentioned, be about the political body making this, I would also be concerned about that being put on the planning commission to make those special use permits allowable for whatever reason. That could be a concern too. So you go back to the tattoo part of it, which you could put, you know, they could say, well, okay, that, but it's not allowed. And we would end up with some really odd, possibly some odd development concerns and really not controlling. So then it's back to the wild, wild west of what our zoning used to be, and we would just continue on and put that high rise in an R1. But, you know, which maybe that should have been designated in R1. We should look at that. But we have those areas where we have, you know, that, like, I think schools are oddity, you know, but we have successes of them being who and going over Owego, so I think we have the successes of that.
building.
Yeah, I was in Pomeroy yesterday, very nice facility with doing Meals on Wheels yesterday. It was a great facility and, but I'm not advocating for that. I'm not advocating for anything. I'm just trying to create a way that we can utilize something, and, you know, that would be, to me, it would be detrimental to have to tear that. We have a class reunion, I think they're coming in tomorrow, or that was one of the, you know, early on, that they want to have a meeting, their class meeting there, so they're doing that in that building. You know, we have wrestling, and their first night of practice is tonight. We got 3 community wrestling groups that's trying to utilize the area. So I'd like to continue those kind of things, but realistically, we have to have some kind of avenue to make it allowable, whatever that might be, whatever we think the best use is. And it's arbitrary. I mean, the whole community needs to be involved. I don't know that there's another mechanism other than public hearings and do all that. Maybe we put everything to referendum, we could do that, but that would be very costly and very long process, and very detrimental. So, so that's kind of where that's at. So I just want to speak clearly to that. And that's where we're, you know, the impetus of all of that. So as I mentioned, I did the Meals on Wheels. That's a great idea. If anybody gets a chance, the city routes, they can do a ride along with them. You go down and watch it, or a well-oiled machine down there. They put together the food, they do it like sodium and nutrients. They're pretty complicated. It's really a neat thing. To stop down and at least see it, get a chance to meet them and do it. I think you would be surprised. You always read about Meals on Wheels, you hear about it. It seems like it's outside of where we are, but I was in every one of your districts. Every one of them, got to see, and the interaction that the driver has day to day, some be short, some be a little bit longer. Some are, you know, very appreciative, and some are, you know, but that common every day is a wellness check. It's good for them. They're getting a nice hot meal right then, and then they have another one for later to have. And then also the senior center, which is completely there, putting the furniture in the common. That's being going in. So hopefully we'll get everybody out there at some point. And maybe we even do an off-location meeting there to try to get our seniors to start embracing that. Because I think it's healthy for people to get out and see other people. So that's part of that. So I think that's great. This morning I met with the hospital, my quarterly meeting with the hospital, to try to work on some of the items that we've been working on. So it's been working well as far as pushing the problems from Tompkins County and Chemung County that have been coming here, because they have not been in Divergent since January. Divergent is when they have no room in the ER because we have an influx. So we had that big influx of others coming from outside of our county, which we all recognize the difference in our community by doing that. So we'll continue on that push. And the hospitals are a great partner, and they're working on really unique things and some good ideas. They're going to continue to work on some improvements, which we'll be in touch with them later when they do that press release. The water department had a water main break in the corner of the plaza this morning. I think it was a 6-inch water main break. And before we got out of our downtown meeting, it was all resolved. So they did a great job there dealing with that. Our meeting this morning was on the construction for downtown, and it starts Monday. So be aware, Front City Rising is up and running. We did a press release on that. That's out, and so that'll be the place to go. Because they could be jumping, they could be in front of the post office today and run into something, and we're moving across the street. Because we keep this thing moving. It's not gonna be pretty, so be ready for the phone call. I appreciate everybody's patience and understanding. Fire department, you know, they've been busy. They had, I think 4 calls in 20 minutes on Sunday. All in 20-minute periods, so they've been doing their usual, so we appreciate that. Our staffing shortages continue at City Hall and outside. So we are currently in the process. So our IT will end at the end of this month. Our accounts payable end of the month, payroll ends at the end of the month. We still have a water position open. Deputy DPW is open. He's interviewing. Great. Deputy Fire Chief will be open. So we'll continue to plug away with filling those holes. It's a common thing. I know the county is down 30-some%. It's a pretty high number, 38%. So everybody's having trouble and, trying to work on it. But we have some things working. We got some stopgaps in between to try to work on that. We'll talk about the administrative later in the meeting. I think that's all I have.
That's a lot.
Yeah, that's all right. I tried to,
Been busy.
but I wanted to give everybody an update so they at least understand where it's at, but it's in crisis mode on the second floor. Would you say that kind of crisis mode is appropriate? Okay, thank you for that, Sawyer. All right. so-
Next month you can.
Good, thank you. But again, take a moment to thank you, Connie, for everything you've done. You've really been a great, not that. You're humble and honest, right, Connie? Okay, thank you. All right, so we'll go to the ward reports, Ward 1. Scott,
All quiet, Ward 1.
Ward 2. Oh,
Well, it's been spring break, so it's been a quiet Ward 2 as well.
good.
Yeah.
Make it up some time there, Mr. Down, Ward 3.
Had a minor little hoax issue and it's been resolved. So that's it. Other than that, it's been quiet.
Do you want to talk about hotels when I get to you? Okay, because I did not, I forgot to do that. Miss Lane?
Well, the college students are back, so traffic is up a little. I did have people ask about the smaller totes, and other than that, we're good.
Okay, good. Ward 5, Mr. Dunn?
Received a concern from a constituent of some persons going to people's houses, knocking on doors, that were in the neighborhood. I'm not certain what it is, why people are knocking on doors. They seem concerned, person's elderly. And they're really concerned about who's knocking on them. That being said, I haven't heard a pattern of that being reported. And that's generally when I start getting really concerned. I do know it is. People are petitioning for election material. That may be part of it. We did share that with the constituent. But nothing unusual happened on the property after they went outside to check, so. I'm hopeful that that's all it was. That's it.
Yeah, that police chief's listening, I'm sure. Good. Ward 6, Mr. Carpenter?
Dr. Blue Moose, and the totes came in last week, on Friday, the small totes, so now they're distributing. When you have your pickup this week, they're dropping off the small one, and they're taking the big ones away. So it's gonna be another week or so, before they have that all distributed.
I believe the big ones are not necessarily being taken away right now. Do you know that? I've heard, well, Robin, you took that call today, right? Aren't they waiting?
They're
They're picking them up. On a second, so they're dropping them off, emptying those and then one back.
Okay.
Yeah, so they gotta make sure. So, but the small totes are being distributed, so give it 2 weeks is what I've been telling everybody, and if you don't hear, you don't have something by then start making calls.
The only other thing is, the mayor is, while I'm doing my petitions, is the electric hookups on Main Street. They ain't gonna have any electric hookup with cars on Main Street with a truck that is very ideal because they're moving towards that area, and does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it kind of makes sense, but it doesn't. There is no plan for it, no provisions on it, and I don't know if this is necessarily a good idea to take up those spaces for long-term charging. We are working on some charging that's, will happen. Before that, looking for the lot over by CBS, but we're not there yet. But we're working on that, and I'll come to you guys. But we're currently working on that as an area, and we'll consider that on a reconstruction in the back, right, a lot. To be able to possibly do something for that area eventually. So we wouldn't want them on necessarily in front of businesses, doing that, they can park in a different area. Oh, charge for that.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's it. Back up.
Well, I got a book tonight. All quiet. What? No, it's all quietness, I'm more, thank you. Rick.
Mr. Becker. Mr. Mike.
Just one thing, we had a new neighbor that moved in down the street a while back. And really appreciate good neighbors. That last snowstorm we had, this individual took a snowblower down one side of the street, the full length, came back the other side. They did this twice during that storm. And it's my understanding that this individual works for some kind of a maintenance department. I haven't had a chance to catch up with him yet to thank him for it, but this is something that's really appreciated, and the neighbors in my neighborhood certainly appreciate it as well. Well, once I catch up with him, I'll certainly thank him for his good deeds. But that's all I have.
So
Thank
your
you.
wife been bringing them cookies, you wanna make sure you can still get them during the snowstorm, that's what's going on out there.
I'm thinking you just need to quantify why you bought the snowblower to his wife. All right, we'll move, approval of minutes. I'll move. Second, Scott. Beckwith. Corrections, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, on to resolutions. Agenda item number 1, confirm mayor's appointment to planning commission.
Resolved that the city of Portland Common Council does hereby affirm Mayor Steve's appointment of Mike Sportout, CCM, to the planning commission for a term expiring December 31, 2025.
Okay, well, so Mr. Beckwith, Carpenter, questions?
I have a problem.
Yes. She's back up.
Okay, I know. So I remember asking, where do we get these people's names? And where do they come from? And refresh my memory, where do these people names come from?
Numerous sources. Mostly from council members that would recommend a person's name.
Okay,
And there might, or it might be a staff member that knows somebody that has interest, has the knowledge and input of, that would be beneficial to them.
okay. Can you say where this person's name came from?
I know Mr. Swearout for years and his background has been that way. Mr. Jewett talking about who would be a benefit for the city.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Great at it. I know, like, really good work in corner.
Okay. Yeah.
And I believe real quick, to answer part of the question, if you Google or go on the city and look up all these departments, they use a long time, but I'm assuming the application's still on there and all that.
I'd have to.
I know, I don't go on it anymore, I don't. Yeah, but I mean, if you Google or just search all, planning board, zoning board, all them departments, they all show up, qualifications that. You might wanna look into it, I could be wrong, it used to be.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Anybody else? Okay, hold it.
Councilman Scott. Aye. Councilmember Sullivan,
Aye.
Councilmember Pinello,
Aye.
Councilmember Lane,
Aye.
Councilmember Thompson. Aye. Councilmember Carpenter.
Aye.
Councilmember Beckwith. Aye. Councilmember Michaels.
Aye.
Kind of hearing that in Andy's voice. I'm trying. Agenda item number 2, confirm mayor's appointment to the Board of Public Works.
Resolved that the city of Portland Common Council does hereby confirm Mayor Steve's appointment of Alan Riccatelli to the Board of Public Works for a term expiring December 31, 2025.
I'll move.
Second. Hello, you're back with. So this name came from Mr. Dowie and I asked him.
This makes sense.
Did that.
Yeah. Makes sense.
All right, perfect. Anybody else?
I didn't get a resume.
Well,
I'm fine with that.
move it.
Councilmember Scott. Aye. Councilmember Sullivan.
Aye.
Councilmember Pinello.
Aye.
Councilmember Lane.
Aye.
Councilmember Thompson.
Aye.
Councilmember Carpenter.
Aye.
Member Beckwith.
Aye.
Councilmember Michael.
Aye.
Agenda item number 3, I'm gonna hold, so we have a public hearing, because there's a lot of lengthy change in there, does that include? I delineated the supporting documents to show you what was changed in that, so Remember, don't confuse this one with the other one that the public hearing is speaking about. It was recognizes both along with 12 is not the same. So, but we will have a public hearing on both of them at the next meeting, so, and to the resolution that you would see, please communicate that to somebody, so we can get that in here. But these recognize also, real quick on these, that these are all mandated by the state, so if you see a parking garage, don't flip out, that's a requirement that we have to do, so I think they will put a parking garage in.
We just, right, we just have to bring our code enforcement provisions into compliance with the state. They change every couple of years. We gotta go through and make sure that we're checking every box. And enforcing those rules.
So we'll hold that over, please review it, if there's anything you want to change, you can send me an email, just myself an email directly, and we'll get it taken care of, or Andy and I, or AJ, Andy and I, that'd be great. We can get those resolved on either one of those resolutions, we will look into that one matter. That was brought to our attention earlier,
But ultimately, this is the bare minimum. The city can always.
and we can always make it better, and we certainly, there's a lot of things we need to amend, we're working on those. I was met with the historic commission this morning, and there's some issues there that, like the signage, you could have. Like neon light, you could have 12 inches back from the glass, I probably should say, you can have it 12 inches back from the glass, which is. Not gonna stop what we don't want to have. LED lights, so that's something we're gonna look, try to change those, so there's gonna be more coming. We'll get to.
There's a loophole, they'll find.
Yeah, so that's what we're trying to eliminate, and again, that's the point of not getting too much, but enough. Okay, agenda item number 4. That requires second public hearing related to community development block grant. Which provided funding for the purchase of equipment for New York Hemp Oil under the New York Small City CDBG grant.
Resolved that a public hearing shall be held prior to the common council's scheduled regular meeting at 6 P.M. on April 4th, 2023 at City Hall, 25 Court Street, Portland, New York, with respect to Community Development Block Grant CDBG number 285 ED 948-20, which provided funding for the purchase of equipment for New York Hemp Oil LLC under the New York State Small Cities CDBG program. And be it further resolved that public notice of such public hearing shall be published in the official newspaper of the city of Portland.
Here we go. So we'll cover back with. Any questions?
This is obviously a new program. We've made it all the way to the block grant already to get this funding.
Well. Yes, well, no, actually, this is the closeout of this document. This grant was awarded and we're gonna be closing this out. You know, I actually awarded this money over the past 4 years. Now they're closing. They're gonna have to get the final payout after we get this, we're gonna get the final. So they met their goal, which is great. They're way ahead of it as far as the other markets they've drawn from actually to cannabis, so that they're ahead of it that way too, so. That's really important.
So
I mean, not that you needed to put it in there, but that, now that you just said it the way it is, I know what you're talking. It's a little confused what you're talking. Without, yeah, okay.
So for the 4th, the next meeting, the 1st in April.
Yes.
Meeting, yeah.
So we'll have 3 public hearings. For that next meeting. Well, I have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Councilmember Scott.
Aye.
Councilmember Silliman.
Hi,
Councilmember Pinello.
Aye.
Councilmember Lane.
Aye.
Councilmember Thompson.
Aye.
Councilmember Carpenter.
Aye.
Councilmember Beckwith. Councilmember Michael.
And then item number 5, set required for public hearing relating to the proposal of the year 2023 community development block grant program and upcoming funding round, purpose of which is to provide information to the public with respect to the CDBG program and allow the public opportunity to participate in the grant process.
Resolved that a public hearing shall be held prior to the common council's scheduled regular meeting at 6 P.M. on April 4th, 2023 at City Hall, 25 Court Street, Portland, New York, on the proposed 2023 Community Development Block Grant Program CDBG, an upcoming funding round to provide information to the public about the CDBG program and to allow the public to provide input into the grant process. And be it further resolved that public notice of such public hearing shall be published in the official newspaper of the city of Portland.
I'll move.
I'll second Ms. Pinello, Mr. Scott. Any questions? Roll call.
Councilmember Scott.
Aye.
Councilmember Sullivan. Councilmember Pinello.
Aye.
Councilmember Lane.
Aye.
Councilmember Thompson.
Aye.
Councilmember Carpenter.
Aye.
Councilmember Beckwith.
Aye.
Councilmember Michaels.
Aye.
Agenda item number 6, authorize sole source award contract with Air Cleaning Systems, Inc. for Armory's exhaust system.
Resolved that the city of Portland Common Council awards the sole source bid for the exhaust removal system to Air Cleaning Systems Incorporated in the amount of $97,202 and authorizes the fire chief to sign a contract with same.
I'll move.
Thanks, Scott, Ms. Lane. Any questions on it?
Just want to point out that the bid process did go out correctly. Only one bidder came back, which was awarded the project.
Is this gonna cover all the vehicles that are stored in there, or
We'll cover all the fire department vehicles.
that they're using for call?
Yes. It would not be sole source under our procurement policy, it's sole source under federal procurement policy, that's why we have to formally declare it sole source.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kind of speculate. I just want to know, speaking of the Armory, that they fix the lights out front of there, you get a chance to drive by there, it's very nice, thank you for that, by the way. All right, so anybody else? All right, roll it, please.
Councilmember Scott.
Aye.
Councilmember Sullivan. Councilmember Pinello.
Aye.
Councilmember Lane.
Aye.
Councilmember Thompson. Councilmember Carpenter. Councilmember Beckwith.
Aye.
Councilmember Michael.
Aye.
Agenda item number 7, appropriate funds and authorize the purchase of a tactical response unit, ERU vehicle.
Resolved that the city of Portland Common Council hereby appropriates $40,000 to the Portland City Police Department budget line A 3120-520600 operating equipment and authorizes the purchase and modification of a new vehicle for the tactical response unit.
I so moved.
Scott, Carpenter. Questions on them? So this is the, you remember we used to have that black van in the parking lot, it was for our, SWAT, TRU, I don't, SWAT. Probably the movie stuff, but,
You are old.
yeah. Thanks for reminding me. But yeah, it's definitely a need. The ones we've been looking at is a little bit bigger, they can stand up in it, they're like an. So they got some ideas picked out, and they're ready to move on, so this is a definite for our coast.
Is this the only vehicle that we would have
For that
those
purpose,
capabilities?
that's correct. I mean, the state police has one,
Yes.
a little more robust. I don't think we'd want to see that in our budget, but I think that's available to us if, when needed and then.
Yes.
But let's hope that we don't need it, but they have been using it quite a bit. Organization agrees with it. Anybody else? All right, move it, please.
Councilmember Scott.
Aye.
Councilmember Sullivan.
Aye.
Councilmember Pinello.
Aye.
Councilmember Lane.
Aye.
Councilmember Thompson.
Aye.
Councilmember Carpenter. Councilmember Beckwith.
Aye.
Councilmember Michaels.
Aye.
Then item number 8, create the position of recreational maintenance supervisor for the Portland Youth Bureau.
Resolved, the city of Portland Common Council does hereby create the position of recreation maintenance supervisor within the Department of the Youth Bureau to be paid from budget line A 7110-5110 with a salary range of $51,022.40 to $58,947.20 based on the current Civil Service Employees Association Local 1000 contract.
We get a motion. Mr. Carpenter, Mr. Tom. So, let's say Tom. Do you want to speak to this person?
Yes, this role was a shared role between DPW and Youth Bureau. We're branching these two positions out and separating them so that this individual can certainly focus on our parks. I think everyone will notice that this summer, there's gonna be a lot of improvements to our parks. New vegetation, landscaping, playground equipment, painting, fencing. So just stay tuned, and Andrew here will keep us up to date as these things progress. Oh yeah, then the fountain at Yeaman. That's something that was currently being worked on as well.
So Ms. Pendergrove, if you could address this position.
So,
You could talk to them.
currently, DPW and I, split this position. At Youth Bureau, at DPW, with the retirement of this individual, we feel it's important to this position full-time in Youth Bureau with my expectations of our parts. And this will allow us to meet and exceed those expectations, of the upcoming projects, day-to-day maintenance.
Says supervisor, and so are there individuals that this person would actually supervise, or are they the sole person and that rank is given because?
Yeah, that's the job title in the CFDA contract with the union W workers. So that's the title of their position. They will be supervising the other maintenance workers in our department. But they will be focusing on the overall responsibility of planning, maintaining, and supervising.
In that role, there's two,
There's currently three
right? So there's the supervising three, but there are working supervisors, so they are all of the
full-time, but we do have part-time staff in the summer when it's busy.
Okay. Or excited to send it, good thing.
Many,
Anybody else? All right, thank you.
thank you.
All right, so we move it, please.
Councilmember Scott. Aye. Councilmember Silliman.
Aye.
Councilmember Pinello. Councilmember Lane.
Aye.
Councilmember Thompson. Aye. Councilmember Carpenter. Aye. Councilmember Beckwith. Aye. And Councilmember Michael.
Aye.
First now, they're just looking into. Agenda item number 9, accept and recognize donations to Cortland Youth Bureau.
Resolved that the city of Cortland Common Council accepts the donations listed below and appropriates funds with the Cortland Youth Bureau operating budget accounts outlined below.
So we thank the Vivianos and the Babcock for their donation to them. I'll take a motion. Beckwith, Thompson. Any discussions? All those in favor, or go ahead. Call the roll.
Councilmember Scott. Aye. Councilmember Silliman.
Aye.
Councilmember Pinello. Councilmember Lane.
Aye.
Councilmember Thompson. Aye. Councilmember Carpenter. Councilmember Beckwith.
Aye.
Councilmember Mike.
Director of Administration, and Finance search updates, you can see on the, we're in the final stage, pretty excited about it. Thank you for everybody who took the time to meet some or all the candidates. I was very appreciative, and your input is valuable. And thanks to the committee for their hard work in putting this together too. So we hope to have something to you by the April 4th meeting for your blessing to move forward on the with the candidate. Discussion number 2, contract negotiations. So we have a couple things going on right now, beyond our labor unions. We have the fire, that's currently going on, with the cross guard that's currently going on. DSEA is coming up, and we're getting ready to start working with them as well. But we also have a couple other contracts that's come to light. So I'm kind of looking to solicit a little bit of help on some of these items. So hopefully maybe I can get some volunteers to help with some of these items. One of them is Spectrum. So that franchise agreement expired 18 years ago. Was signed by Mayor Walsh with the last time it was done, and then they expired. So a lot of things have changed, and so One of the things that I'd like to be able to try to push for, able to get some of that to happen already, is to get some lower cost for internet for people. So there's a sliding scale that can be given to people, and get that lower cost, somewhere like $14.95, somewhere in that for internet. So push that forward and have that on the next meeting, so we get that out, that public education piece out to people to make sure that they know what's available, and there's a couple other programs as well. So, but with the spectrum one, I'd like to sit down and do it. They used to have, we used to have a cable commission, of course, they don't want cable anymore, and a cable commission comprised of people, Portlandville, Homer, abroad, I believe, and surrounding areas. I don't think that necessarily affects us anymore, the way it works, because, you know, Homer will have their own, agreement, with franchise agreement with Spectrum or the like. So, but I'd like to talk about that, so that's other input, so that when we come to council with the final resolution, there'd be some other inputs to that, so I'll take some volunteers for that. The other, before we volunteer for all of them, they shoot me an email about this, tell you what they all are, and then hopefully one or two will volunteer for each one. The sales tax negotiation, that's gonna be coming up, that's gonna be somewhat complex and complicated with the county. One of the things I found out that we're doing for the county and some of the pre-negotiation stuff that I've researched is we're charging the county 1.5% to collect their sales tax from our constituents, which preliminarily, it looks like that's not a legal way to do it, and we're collecting that 1.5%. Because, and then what the county is doing is turn around and adding that kind of reassessing our same tax base, which is up in the road too, back again, 1.5%. So we're collecting it. Then they're saying, well, you're short 1.5%, we'll just bill it again. But it's like a vicious cycle. So that kind of stuff needs to go away. I'm looking to eliminate that, to try to make it better. And then we're holding the sales tax to the end of the year. We weren't doing just here. That's, so I want to try to fix those. And then the other ones we have is this one, 22 years old. Expired, but it was a 30-year contract. Maybe Bruce can talk to that. I did take some, we had a situation with Homer. And so we met with the mayor, Homer, and his staff and financial staff, and tried to come up with a solution. We meter the sewage as it comes into our system, and that had broken, so we had to come up with a way to come up with a cost average. If you go back to that contract that expired 22 years and it has into it, and it has to be some ridiculous high number. So we just use common sense logical math. We try to put together an appropriate a number that made sense to everybody we agree. So they have agreed to that, sent that back to them, but that contract was, pretty outdated.
It is, and the terms of the contract are needlessly complex. So we took this as an opportunity to reopen a dialogue, negotiating updated contracts. Right now, only Portlandville has a current contract with us, and that is only because in order to secure funding for a project, they renewed the contract as it existed. None of our client communities are happy with the way the contracts are laid out. They
And they're over complex, how we appropriate, how we decide how we get a payment, they're different. So we're going to get some commonality there, so part of that idea maybe be appropriate, the liaison of this treatment plan to be that help with that negotiate or that contract language is what we're looking at to just try to get another voice to this process. That will be great. So I certainly want to try to get some volunteers to do that, to talk about those issues. So please email me if you can, or talk to me after the meeting, and I'll get you in and we'll start those communications discussion. Thank you. So with the IT leadings, and payroll, so I've talked to the county about doing a shared services agreement. And we're still in the discussion with the payroll part of it. But the IT part that's moving along as well, trying to come up with a solution so that we can have boots on the ground. Currently now, a lot of our IT is done outside. Now with technology, they can access, they can monitor our server and tell it if it's overheating, overloaded, or if there's issues to any of our Wi-Fi, for example. So that's the services that are available now. So we have an outside company that we've been using well. They're on retainer as well as our Mr. Stafford who retiring. So with that done, so now if the case is to not necessarily fill that IT role, and we're doing shared services MOU, that could be a savings to all of us and utilizing their staffing power that they have over there to do that. The only concern I have there is if we had an urgency and they had an urgency at the same time, we wouldn't necessarily get their attention. So now I'm looking at a private contractor to maybe help us to cover that need in the event of that happening as well. So tomorrow we were doing the tour through all of our assets, if you will, in our facilities with all those people that we just discussed, the county, private contractor, the subcontractor that's doing Mr. Stafford, and myself. And we're gonna walk around and do an assessment of all of our stuff, so we have that all listed in item. So I just want everybody to know that that's out there, and at some point we'll probably come back to that, but right now, I'm trying to fill that need. Get that done, so this county is willing to step up and help us temporarily as we try to get our feet on the ground, to be able to adjust this. We didn't know what was happening, but rather than overreact, trying to fill that. That's the short term need that is gonna help us out, we'll work that out as we go. But, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, item number 4, this is that building repurpose, we discussed that, I think I kind of went into that pretty in depth, and hopefully everybody's got their point now, and certainly, again, communicate, I'll be glad to listen to it, I'll be at the planning meeting to discuss it, and certainly I'd love any other ideas or concepts to get past that hurdle that's in front of us to try to make that work, so that we don't have to go to that extreme. That is the intent, there's nothing else behind it, other than, but I figure if the public really doesn't want it, not like we could sneak it through if we have 4 public hearings or 3 public hearings in the same. That's most. All right, with that said, anybody else have anything better to add? Somebody want to move for adjournment? Mr. Scott, Ms. Lane, all in favor?
Aye.
You.